Hey everyone, I'm Peter Stories here to guide you today. If you use this video to drift off to sleep, please tap like, hit subscribe, and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from and what time it is there. Now settle in, get cozy, and let yourself relax. My name is Austin Rivers, and this was the 14th hour I'd been searching for Madison Brooks in the twisted pine labyrinth of Blackwood National Forest. My rookie ranger boots had worn blisters through 2 pairs of wool socks. My GPS unit's battery was down to 15%, and the metallic taste of exhaustion coated my tongue like old pennies. The radio crackled with static as I keyed the mic with trembling fingers. Unit 47 to base, no sign of the missing hiker at grid reference 4-7 Alpha, moving to next quadrant. My voice cracked like a teenager's, betraying the professional confidence I was desperate to project. "Copy that, Rivers," came Sergeant Martinez's weathered voice through the speaker. "Remember, kid, you're still learning the ropes out there. Don't be a hero. Don't be a hero." The words stung because they were true. 3 months on the job, and this was my first major search and rescue. Madison Brooks, 22 years old, had vanished from the Whitmore Trail system 48 hours ago. Her parents' tearful faces haunted every step I took through the dense undergrowth, their desperate pleas echoing in my skull. "Please find our daughter. Please bring her home." The afternoon sun filtered through the canopy in sickly yellow shafts, casting everything in a jaundiced light that made my stomach churn. Pine sap clung to my uniform sleeves, and the sweet rotten smell of decomposing leaves filled my nostrils with every labored breath. My body ached in places I didn't know could ache. My lower back screamed from the 40-pound pack, my thighs burned from navigating steep terrain, and my shoulders felt like someone had driven railroad spikes through them. But it was the silence that unnerved me most. 14 hours in these woods, and I hadn't heard a single bird call. Not one. The forest felt wrong, empty, like something had sucked all the life out of it, leaving behind only the skeletal husks of trees and the oppressive weight of watching eyes. I checked my notes again, squinting at the GPS coordinates scrawled in my shaking handwriting. Madison's last known position was supposed to be somewhere near the old mining access road, but I'd been searching that grid for 3 hours without finding so much as a footprint. My radio range was getting spotty this deep in the forest, and the battery indicator on my handheld GPS blinked ominously red. That's when I smelled it. Incense. Heavy, cloying, mixed with something else. Something that reminded me of my grandmother's basement after the floods. Mold and decay and something metallic. Something that made my throat close up and my hands start to shake. I followed the smell through a break in the tree line, pushing aside dead branches that seemed to grab at my uniform with skeletal fingers. The forest floor beneath my boots felt spongy, unnatural, like walking on a thick carpet of something I didn't want to identify. My flashlight beam danced nervously ahead of me, creating shadows that seemed to move independent of their sources. And then I saw it. The church. It shouldn't have been there. I'd studied the topographical maps for hours before heading out. Every structure, every landmark, every abandoned building was marked and cataloged. But there it stood, maybe 50 yards ahead through the pine trees. A small wooden church, its white paint peeling like diseased skin, its steeple tilted at an angle that hurt to look at. My radio crackled with static. "Unit 47, report your position." I fumbled for the mic, my sweaty fingers nearly dropping it. "Base, this is Rivers. I'm at..." I checked my GPS, but the screen had gone black. Dead battery. "I'm investigating a structure not marked on our maps. Possible shelter location for the missing hiker." The static grew louder, and Martinez's voice came through broken and distorted. "Rivers, can't signal, out of there." Then nothing but white noise. I stared at the church, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. The smart thing, the rookie ranger handbook thing, would be to mark the location and return with backup. But Madison Brooks had been missing for 48 hours. Every minute counted, and this was the first real lead I'd found. The incense smell grew stronger as I approached, making my eyes water and my stomach lurch. Up close, I could see the church was old. Really old. The wood was gray and warped, and some of the windows were boarded up with planks that looked like they'd been nailed in place from the inside. The front door hung slightly ajar, creaking softly in a breeze I couldn't feel on my skin. I drew my mag light and approached the entrance, my boots crunching on what looked like scattered bone fragments in the dead grass. Animal bones, I told myself. Had to be animal bones. "Madison?" I called out, my voice swallowed by the oppressive silence. "Madison Brooks? This is Austin Rivers with the Forest Service. Are you in there?" No response. Just that soft, rhythmic creaking of the door. I pushed it open with the barrel of my flashlight, the hinges shrieking like something in pain. The smell hit me like a physical blow. Incense mixed with copper and something sweet-sick that made my gorge rise. My flashlight beam cut through darkness so complete it seemed solid, illuminating rows of rotting wooden pews and an altar at the far end that looked wrong. Stained. Dark spatters covered the white cloth in patterns that didn't look accidental. "Madison?" I called again, my voice barely above a whisper. That's when I heard it. A soft sobbing coming from somewhere near the altar. My heart leaped. Had I found her? Was she hurt? I started forward, my flashlight beam dancing ahead of me, illuminating glimpses of disturbing details. Scratch marks carved deep into the wooden walls, symbols that hurt to look at directly, and hanging from the rafters. I forced myself to look away from whatever was hanging up there. "Madison, it's okay," I called out, moving down the center aisle between the pews. "I'm here to help you. I'm going to get you out of here." The sobbing grew louder, more distinct. Definitely female. Definitely coming from behind the altar. I quickened my pace, my boots echoing hollowly in the confined space. The temperature seemed to drop with every step, and my breath began to mist in the beam of my flashlight. "Madison, can you hear me? My name is Austin Rivers. I'm a forest ranger. Your parents sent me to find you." I rounded the altar and stopped dead. There was no one there, just more stains on the floor and walls and carved into the wooden altar itself, a symbol that seemed to writhe and shift when I looked at it directly. The sobbing had stopped as suddenly as it had started, leaving only the sound of my own ragged breathing and the thunderous pounding of my pulse in my ears. That's when the church door slammed shut behind me. The sound echoed through the building like a gunshot, and my flashlight beam immediately swung toward the entrance. But the door wasn't just closed, it was gone. Where it had been, there was now only solid wooden wall, as if the entrance had never existed at all. Panic shot through my nervous system like ice water. I fumbled for my radio, keying the mic frantically. "Base! Base! This is Unit 47, emergency! I'm trapped in a structure, need immediate assistance." Nothing but static. "Base, please respond. I'm at..." I looked around wildly, trying to establish my position. I'm at an unmarked church structure approximately 2 clicks south of the mining road. Madison Brooks may be here. Request immediate backup. The static faded to silence. Even the red light on my radio had gone dark. I was alone. I forced myself to breathe slowly, to think like a ranger instead of a panicked rookie. There had to be another way out. Maybe a back door. Maybe a window I could break. I started methodically sweeping my flashlight beam around the interior, looking for any possible exit. That's when I noticed the walls had changed. Where before there had been maybe 20 feet from the entrance to the altar, the church now stretched impossibly long in both directions. Rows upon rows of pews extended beyond the reach of my flashlight beam, disappearing into a darkness so complete it seemed to swallow the light, and carved into every visible surface. The walls, the pews, the floor beneath my feet were those same writhing symbols that hurt to look at directly. "This isn't possible," I whispered to myself. But my voice sounded small and hollow in the vastness that had somehow opened up around me. A soft laugh echoed from somewhere in the darkness ahead of me. Female, young, familiar. "Madison?" I called out, starting forward between the endless rows of pews. "Madison, where are you?" The laugh came again, closer this time. My flashlight beam swept frantically back and forth, illuminating glimpses of things I didn't want to see. Dark stains that looked fresh, scratches in the wood that formed words in languages I didn't recognize and hanging from the rafters high above. I kept my eyes fixed straight ahead. "Austin," came a voice from the darkness, soft, scared, definitely female. "Austin, help me." My heart lurched. That was Madison's voice. I'd heard it on the voicemail her mother had played for me, the last message she'd left before disappearing. "Madison, where are you? Keep talking so I can find you." "I'm here," the voice called back, seeming to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. "I'm lost, Austin. I've been lost for so long." I broke into a run, my boots pounding on the wooden floor, my flashlight beam dancing wildly ahead of me. But no matter how fast I ran, the voice never seemed to get closer. The pews stretched on endlessly, and the darkness ahead remained absolute. "Madison, I'm coming. Just keep talking." "Austin." Her voice came again, but this time it sounded different. Older. Wrong. "Austin, why did you come here?" I skidded to a stop, my chest heaving. Something in her tone made the hair on my arms stand straight up. "Madison, are you hurt?" "I've been waiting for you, Austin," the voice said, and now I could hear something else underneath it. Something that sounded like grinding teeth. "We've all been waiting for you." That's when I saw them. Faces. Dozens of them, pressed against the windows I hadn't noticed before. Windows that definitely hadn't been there when I'd entered. Pale faces with dark, empty eye sockets and mouths stretched in silent screams. And I recognized some of them. Hikers who had gone missing over the years. Campers who had never returned. And there, in the center of them all, Madison Brooks. But not the vibrant young woman from the photographs her parents had shown me. This Madison was pale as bone, her eyes black pits, her mouth moving soundlessly as if she were trying to warn me about something. If this story is giving you chills, smash that follow button for more supernatural horror. What would you do in Austin Rivers' situation? Comment below. "You came to save her," said the voice that was no longer Madison's voice, but something ancient and hungry wearing her words like a mask. "But you can't save anyone here, little ranger. No one leaves the church." My flashlight flickered and dimmed. I smacked it against my palm, but the beam continued to fade. In the growing darkness, I could hear them moving, shuffling footsteps on wooden floors, whispered prayers in languages that predated Christ, and underneath it all, the sound of something large and patient breathing in the shadows just beyond my vision. "The church has been waiting," the thing said, its voice now coming from directly behind me. "Waiting for someone pure, someone who wants to help. Someone who believes in rescue and redemption and all those beautiful, naive things." I spun around, but there was nothing there. Just darkness and the overwhelming smell of incense and decay. Madison Brooks was just the bait, Austin. Just the sweet little lamb we needed to draw in our shepherd. The truth hit me like a physical blow. Madison had never been lost. She'd been taken, chosen, used as bait to draw in rescuers. To draw in people like me who still believed they could make a difference in the world. How many others had there been? How many rescue workers, park rangers, search and rescue volunteers had followed false trails into this place? My flashlight died completely, plunging me into absolute darkness. But I could still see them, the faces pressed against the windows watching me with those hollow eye sockets. And I understood, with the kind of crystal clarity that comes in moments of absolute terror, that I was never leaving this place, that in a few days, maybe a week, another rookie ranger would get the call about Austin Rivers who had vanished while searching for Madison Brooks, and they would follow my trail into the forest, and they would find this church, and they would hear my voice calling for help from the darkness. "Welcome to the congregation, Austin," the thing whispered, and I felt cold fingers touch the back of my neck. Service is about to begin. The last thing I remember clearly was the sound of dozens of voices beginning to sing hymns and harmonies that hurt my ears, and the realization that one of those voices was mine. They found my ranger hat 3 days later, hanging from a pine branch exactly 14 miles from where I'd entered the forest. The official report listed me as missing, presumed dead, probably fallen into one of the old mine shafts and unable to call for help. My radio was never recovered. Neither was my body. But sometimes on quiet nights when the wind is still and the forest holds its breath, other rangers report hearing voices calling for help from deep in the woods near the old mining road. Young voices, desperate voices, voices that know their names and their fears and exactly what to say to make them want to help. The smart ones turn around and walk away. The ones like me, the ones who still believe in rescue and redemption and saving people who can't save themselves, they follow the voices deeper into the trees. And eventually, they find what they're looking for. They find the church, and the church finds them. My name is Austin Rivers, and I've been waiting in the darkness for someone like you to come looking for me. Someone who still believes they can make a difference. Someone who still thinks they can save us all. Holy hell, that was intense. Did that ending blow your mind? Like, if you want more terrifying ranger stories, follow for daily supernatural horror, and comment your theory about what really happened to Austin Rivers and Madison Brooks. I read every single one. My name is Blake Anderson, and I should have forgotten the case of Emily Rodriguez, but something brought me back to that cursed forest. 3 months. 3 months since the 26-year-old geneticist vanished without a trace from the Blackwood National Forest. And here I was again, standing at the entrance to Trail 47 with my weathered Garmin GPS showing coordinates 45.2781 to Grind N, 121.7113 to Grind W. The same coordinates where we'd found her abandoned research equipment back in August. 22 years as a forest ranger, and I'd never had a case eat at me like this one. Hell, I'd found lost hikers in blizzards, pulled climbers off cliff faces, and tracked down more missing persons than I could count. But Emily Rodriguez? She'd simply disappeared. My radio crackled with morning static. Base to Unit 7, Blake, you copy? Unit 7 here, Sarah, reading you loud and clear. I adjusted the volume on my Motorola APX 6000, the digital display showing 07:23 a.m., October 15th, 2018. Blake, you sure about going back out there alone? That area's been giving everyone the creeps since Emily vanished. I know. I cut her off, tightening the straps on my 40-pound tactical pack. Inside, emergency medical supplies, 3 days of MREs, water purification tablets, backup batteries for my GPS and my father's old compass, the one that had never failed me in over 2 decades of service. The thing was, I had new evidence. Last night, Emily's research partner at the university had called me, voice shaking. Dr. Marcus Webb had been going through Emily's lab notes when he found something that made his blood run cold. Detailed studies on cellular aging acceleration, with handwritten notes about temporal anomalies in forest environments, and a GPS coordinate that matched exactly where she'd disappeared. Listen, Sarah, I keyed the radio again. If you don't hear from me by 1800 hours, send a team to my last known coordinates. And Sarah, tell them to bring multiple GPS units, the ones we trust. Copy that, Blake. Stay safe out there. I clipped the radio to my duty belt, next to my Sig Sauer P320 service weapon, and started walking. The morning air carried that peculiar smell I'd noticed 3 months ago, like old parchment mixed with ozone, the way the air feels right before a lightning strike. My boots' well-worn Danner Acadias crunched through fallen leaves that seemed wrong somehow. Too brittle for October, too gray, as if they'd aged decades in weeks. 45 minutes in, I should have reached Miller's Creek. Instead, I found myself staring at a trail marker I'd passed 20 minutes ago. The wooden sign read, Trail 47, mile marker 3, but my GPS showed I'd traveled 2.1 miles from the trailhead. What the hell? I muttered, checking my Suunto watch. 08:47 a.m., but I'd started this section at 08:15 and it should have taken me 15 minutes max. I keyed my radio. Unit 7 to base. Static. Then more static. Base? This is Unit 7, do you copy? Nothing but the sound of dead air and a faint whisper that might have been wind through pine needles. The trees around me, towering Douglas firs and western hemlocks, seemed taller than they should be, their shadows falling at angles that didn't match the sun's position. I'd navigated these woods for over a decade, knew every bend and rise, but something fundamental had shifted. My phone buzzed. A text from my wife, Jennifer. "Coffee's getting cold. When are you coming home?" I stared at the message timestamp, 07:30 a.m. But I'd left home at 06:45 and it was now nearly 09:00. I typed back, "Working a case. Home by dinner, I promise." The response came immediately. "You just left 5 minutes ago. Everything okay?" My hands started shaking. Not the nervous tremor of a rookie, but the bone-deep fear of a veteran who suddenly realized he was in completely uncharted territory. I pulled out Emily's file photo, the one her mother had given me with tears streaming down her face. Emily Rodriguez. Brilliant brown eyes, shoulder-length black hair, a smile that suggested she knew secrets the rest of us could only guess at. A geneticist specializing in cellular longevity research, she'd been collecting soil and plant samples in these woods for her dissertation on environmental factors affecting aging in biological systems. Jesus Christ. Environmental factors affecting aging. I looked at my hands holding the photograph. When had the liver spots appeared? When had the wrinkles around my knuckles become so deep? "Emily," I shouted into the forest. "Emily Rodriguez, this is Ranger Blake Anderson." My voice echoed wrong like sound traveling through thick honey, and when the echo returned, it carried other voices, whispers in languages I didn't recognize, pleas for help from people who might have been lost here decades ago. Please. I've been walking for days. My children, they're waiting for me. What year is it? What year is it? I forced myself to breathe deeply, drawing on 22 years of training. Stay calm, trust your equipment, follow protocol. But my compass needle was spinning like a slot machine wheel, and my GPS screen flickered between coordinates that changed with each refresh. The Garmin's estimated arrival time to my next waypoint kept increasing. 47 minutes, 2 hours, 13 minutes, 6 hours, 42 minutes. That's when I saw her. 50 yards ahead, a figure in a red hiking jacket was walking away from me, following the trail. The same red North Face jacket Emily had been wearing when she disappeared. "Emily!" I broke into a run, my pack bouncing against my back. "Emily, stop!" But the faster I ran, the farther away she seemed to get, like chasing someone in a dream. The distance between us remained constant no matter how hard I pushed myself, and my lungs burned with effort that should have closed the gap in seconds. I stopped, gasping, and checked my watch. 11:23 a.m. How was that possible? I'd been running for what felt like 2 minutes, but over 2.5 hours had passed. My radio suddenly burst to life. "Unit 7, this is base. Blake, where the hell are you? You missed your check-in by 4 hours. "Sarah?" I grabbed the radio. "Sarah, what time is it?" "It's 1:47 p.m., Blake. We've been trying to reach you since noon." I looked at my watch again. 11:23 a.m. "Sarah, I need you to listen carefully. Send a team to Trail 47, coordinates 45. 781 north, 121.7113 west. Tell them to bring multiple timepieces and GPS units from different manufacturers. And Sarah, tell my wife. Tell Jennifer I love her." "Blake, you're scaring me. What's happening out there?" The radio went dead. Not static, just complete, absolute silence. That's when I heard Emily's voice. "Blake? Blake Anderson?" I spun around. She was standing 10 feet away, looking exactly as she had in the photograph, except for her eyes. Her eyes held the weight of centuries. "Emily? Jesus, Emily, where have you been? Your family's been sick with worry." She tilted her head, studying me with scientific curiosity. "How long do you think you've been looking for me, Blake?" 3 months. You disappeared August 12th. She smiled sadly. "I've been here much longer than that. And you, Blake, look at your hands." I looked down and nearly dropped my radio. My hands were those of an elderly man, spotted, wrinkled, with prominent veins and paper-thin skin. I pulled out my phone and activated the camera, switching it to selfie mode. The face looking back at me was my own, but aged 20 years. Gray hair, deep lines around my eyes, the weathered look of a man in his 70s. What the fuck is happening to me? If this story is giving you chills, smash that follow button for more supernatural horror. What would you do in Blake Anderson's situation? Comment below. "The forest is hungry, Blake," Emily said, her voice carrying the weight of terrible knowledge. "It's been feeding for over a century. Everyone who gets lost here, we don't just die. Our time gets consumed. Our years. That's impossible." Is it? You've been walking in circles for what feels like hours, but your body has been aging for days, weeks. The entity that lives here, the collective consciousness of everyone who ever died lost in these woods, it feeds on temporal energy, lifespans. I tried to run, but my elderly legs betrayed me. I stumbled, fell, and when I looked up, Emily was gone again. My radio crackled with a voice I didn't recognize. "Anyone still out there? I've been lost for 3 days. My name is Robert Chen, and I was hiking Trail 47 when..." The voice faded, replaced by another. "This is Margaret Wilson, lost since 1987. Then another. David Park, missing since 2003. Voices of the lost, calling across time itself. But I was Blake Anderson, veteran forest ranger, and I'd been finding lost people when others gave up hope for over 2 decades. If this thing was feeding on time, on years of life, then I needed to understand its patterns. I forced my aging hands to work, pulling out my notebook and pen. Emily had been studying longevity. What if she'd discovered something about this place? What if her research hadn't been random? Think, Blake. Think like the ranger who saved dozens of lives. The entity manifested as temporal loops, spatial distortions, aging effects. But every predator had patterns, had rules. I'd tracked bears that seemed impossible to find, located hypothermia victims in blizzards that should have killed them. I keyed my radio to the emergency frequency. Any station, this is Forest Ranger Blake Anderson, badge number 4479, located at approximately Trail 47, Blackwood National Forest. If anyone receives this transmission, I need you to understand something crucial. I took a shuddering breath, feeling decades of experience steady my voice despite my ancient hands. This forest contains a temporal anomaly. The entity responsible feeds on human lifespans through time distortion. Emily Rodriguez wasn't just a missing person, she was a researcher who discovered something. Her cellular aging studies led her here for a reason. The radio exploded with static, then suddenly cleared. Blake, this is Emily. Where are you? I'm everywhere the lost have ever been. Blake, I didn't disappear. I chose to stay. My research revealed something incredible. This entity isn't malevolent. It's scared. Scared of what? Death. Real death. It's a collective consciousness of everyone who died lost and alone in these woods, going back to 1847. They're not trying to kill us, Blake. They're trying to live forever, stealing time because they're terrified of what comes after. Understanding hit me like lightning. You stayed to help them. The entity can be reasoned with, but only by someone who understands both temporal biology and has enough life experience to communicate with consciousnesses spanning centuries. Blake, your 22 years as a ranger, your knowledge of these woods, your understanding of human nature, you're the key. I closed my eyes, feeling the weight of all my years of service, all the people I'd saved, all the families I'd reunited. This was just another rescue mission, the biggest one of my career. What do I need to do? Find the source point. GPS coordinates 45.2847 degree N, 121.7089 degree W. There's a grove there where the original 23 pioneers died in 1847. Their bones are still there, and that's where the temporal fracture began. You need to speak to them, Blake. As a ranger who's dedicated his life to bringing lost souls home. I programmed the coordinates into my GPS. For the first time in hours, it locked onto the signal immediately and showed a clear path. The walk took me through increasingly unnatural terrain, trees that spiraled impossibly upward, clearings where the sun cast shadows in multiple directions, streams that flowed backward. But I pressed on, drawing on every ounce of experience from 2 decades of wilderness navigation. The grove, when I found it, was like stepping into a cathedral of loss. Ancient bones lay scattered beneath towering pines, and the air itself seemed to shimmer with accumulated time. I could see them, translucent figures from different eras all overlapping in the same space. The original pioneers in their 1847 clothing, hikers from the 1960s, modern campers with Gore-Tex gear. All of them lost, all of them afraid. I stood in the center of the grove and spoke with the authority of a man who'd spent his life bringing people home. My name is Blake Anderson. I'm a forest ranger, and I've been looking for lost people for 22 years. I know you're scared. I know you don't want to die. But stealing time from the living isn't the answer. The spirits turned toward me, their eyes filled with centuries of desperation. You're not truly lost, I continued. Being lost means no one knows where you are, but I know where you are. Emily Rodriguez knows where you are. The families who've grieved for you know where you are in their hearts. The temporal distortion around me began to shift, stabilize. You don't need stolen time. You need what every lost person needs. Someone to guide you home. And I know the way. Light began to emanate from the bones, and I felt the weight of stolen years lifting from my body. My hands returned to their familiar calloused state. My vision cleared and my watch synchronized with real time. One by one, the spirits began to fade, not into nothingness, but into something that looked like peace. The pioneer woman who'd started it all, the first to die lost and afraid in 1847, looked at me with profound gratitude before dissolving into golden light. Emily appeared beside me, solid and real again. They're gone, she said, finally at rest. And you? What about your research? She smiled, the same brilliant smile from her photograph. I got all the data I needed. Turns out the secret to longevity isn't stealing time from others. It's using the time you have to help others find their way home. We walked out of the forest together as the sun set, my radio finally crackling with Sarah's relieved voice. Unit 7, please respond. Blake, where are you? Unit 7 to base, I responded, my voice steady and strong. Case closed, Sarah. Emily Rodriguez is safe and she's coming home. But as we reached the trailhead, Emily turned to me one last time. Blake, there's something you need to know about what really happened to me. What? She smiled, and for just a moment, her form flickered like candlelight. I died 3 months ago, Blake. Hypothermia, the second night I was lost. But I couldn't rest knowing that entity was still trapping people. I stayed to help guide them home, and to wait for someone with enough experience and compassion to finish what I started. The truth hit me like a physical blow. Then you're a spirit who chose to stay until the job was done, just like you would have if you died in service. Rangers don't abandon their posts, Blake, even in death. As she faded into the twilight, I heard her final words. Tell my family I love them. And Blake, thank you for bringing us all home. I stood alone in the parking lot, holding her research notes, the only physical proof she'd ever been there, and realized that some rescues take longer than others. Some take a lifetime of preparation. Some take 22 years of experience and the courage to face the impossible. My name is Blake Anderson, and I never forgot the case of Emily Rodriguez. Because sometimes, the people we're meant to save aren't the ones we expect. And sometimes, saving them means saving ourselves. Holy hell, that was intense. Did that ending blow your mind? Like if you want more terrifying Ranger stories, follow for daily supernatural horror, and comment your theory about what really happened to Emily Rodriguez. I read every single one. My name is Tyler Mitchell, and I should have forgotten the case of Sarah Johnson, but something brought me back to that cursed forest. 3 months. 3 months since I'd closed that file, stamped it with the bureaucratic finality that every ranger learns to live with. Missing person, presumed dead, case suspended pending new evidence. Sarah Johnson, 26 years old, psychology PhD candidate from Virginia Tech. Last seen October 15, 2018, at GPS coordinates 38.2544 D Grun 79, 84199 degree W in the Monongahela National Forest. Her Subaru Outback found at the Cranberry Wilderness Trailhead, keys still in the ignition, her research equipment scattered across the back seat like she'd just stepped out for a quick hike. But Sarah Johnson hadn't taken a quick hike. She'd vanished into the same 12-square-kilometer area where 23 others had disappeared over the past 15 years. The area we rangers quietly called the amnesia zone, though never in front of civilians. The manila envelope had arrived at my home address 3 days ago. No return address. My name written in Sarah's distinctive handwriting. The same handwriting I'd studied in her research notes, her trail journals, her desperate final text messages to her thesis advisor. Inside, 17 pages of Sarah's research into what she'd termed collective trail disorientation syndrome, complete with psychological profiles of missing hikers, topographical anomaly reports, and one final page that made my blood run cold. The voices are getting stronger. They know things about me that nobody should know. They're using my own memories against me. If anyone finds this, tell my mother I love her. Tell her I'm sorry I never called on her birthday like I promised. Tyler Mitchell, if you're reading this, don't come looking for me. Whatever took the others is still here, and it's learned so much from us. It knows how to hurt us now. It knows exactly how to hurt us. That last part haunted me most. She'd written my name specifically, like she knew I'd be the one to find her research, like she'd seen something that told her exactly who would come looking. I'd been a ranger for 18 years, worked search and rescue in 6 different national forests. I'd found bodies in states that would make veteran cops vomit. I'd talked suicidal hikers off cliff edges and carried dying children out of wilderness ravines. But Sarah's case was different. Sarah's case felt personal in a way that made my wedding ring feel too tight and my morning coffee taste like ash. The Monongahela at dawn looked deceptively peaceful as I parked my patrol SUV at the same trailhead where Sarah's car had been found. October in West Virginia painted the mountainsides in brilliant oranges and reds, the kind of natural beauty that draws thousands of tourists every fall. What they don't see is how quickly that beauty can become claustrophobic, how the same trees that photograph so perfectly can become an endless maze when you're lost and the sun starts setting. My radio crackled as I adjusted my pack straps. Unit 47, this is base. You copy? Copy base. Beginning search grid 7 Alpha at 0627 hours. I kept my voice steady, professional. Chief Hendricks didn't need to know this was personal. Didn't need to know I'd been dreaming about Sarah Johnson's voice calling my name from the trees for 3 straight nights. Roger that, 47. Weather Service shows possible storms moving in by 1400 hours. Keep your check-ins regular. Will do, base. Mitchell out. I'd started at Sarah's documented last known position, a rocky outcropping called Devil's Backbone Ridge, where she'd been photographing what she called spatial displacement markers in her notes. The trail was well maintained, clearly marked, impossible to get lost on under normal circumstances. But Sarah had been documenting abnormal circumstances. Her research suggested that hikers weren't getting lost through normal disorientation. They were being led somewhere. The first sign that something was wrong came at mile marker 3.7. My GPS showed I'd been walking for 43 minutes on a trail that should have taken 25 minutes maximum. When I checked my position, the coordinates didn't match the trail map in my pack. According to my Garmin, I was somehow 3/4 of a mile southeast of where I should be, in an area marked as Restricted 1952 Military Incident Zone. That date meant something. Tickled the edge of a memory I couldn't quite grasp. I pulled out Sarah's research notes, and there it was, a single line I'd missed before. Local archive mentions experimental aircraft crash 1952, location classified. Possibly relevant to psychological phenomenon reports. My hands were shaking as I keyed my radio. Base, this is Unit 47. I'm showing GPS anomalies in Sector 7 Alpha. Can you confirm my position? Static answered me. Then impossibly my own voice came through the radio speaker. Base, this is Unit 47. Everything normal here. continuing search pattern. I stared at the radio like it had grown fangs. I hadn't said those words, but it was definitely my voice, my speech patterns, even the slight Tennessee accent I'd never quite lost despite 18 years in West Virginia. That's when I heard the crying. A woman's voice sobbing, maybe 200 yards upslope through the pine trees, high-pitched, desperate, the kind of crying that comes from real terror. Every instinct told me to respond, to help. 18 years of search and rescue training kicked in as I left the trail and pushed through the underbrush toward the sound. "Hello? Are you injured? I'm a park ranger." The crying stopped immediately. The forest went silent. Not quiet, silent. No bird calls, no squirrel chatter, no insect buzz. Even the wind in the pine needles had stopped. The temperature dropped maybe 15 degrees in the space of a heartbeat, and I could see my breath misting in the suddenly frigid air. "Sarah?" The name escaped my lips before I could stop it. "Sarah Johnson?" Laughter answered me. Not Sarah's laughter, my daughter Emma's laughter. Emma, who was safe in school in Charleston, 150 miles away. Emma, who giggled exactly like that when I pushed her on the swing set in our backyard. Emma, whose laugh was the most beautiful sound in the world and had no business echoing through these cursed trees. I ran. I ran like the coward I was, crashed through branches that tore at my uniform, stumbled over roots that seemed to reach up and grab my boots. My radio crackled with voices. My wife Linda asking when I'd be home for dinner. My father, dead 6 years, giving me advice about Emma's soccer practice. My old training sergeant barking orders from my army days. All voices from my memory. All voices that had no business being in this forest. I burst through a thicket of mountain laurel and stopped dead. In front of me was a clearing that shouldn't exist. A perfect circle maybe 50 yards across where nothing grew except bare dirt. In the center sat an old aircraft wing, twisted and blackened, partially buried in soil that looked like it had been scorched decades ago. Sarah Johnson sat beside the wing, wearing the same clothes she'd disappeared in. North Face jacket, hiking boots, the University of Virginia baseball cap her thesis advisor had mentioned. She looked exactly like her driver's license photo, except for her eyes. Her eyes were completely black, no iris, no pupil, just empty darkness that reflected nothing. "Hello, Tyler," she said in her own voice. Then, in my wife's voice, "You're going to be late for dinner." Then in Emma's voice, "Daddy, why did you leave us?" The thing wearing Sarah's face smiled with too many teeth. "We've learned so much from her, Tyler. She taught us about psychology, about the human mind, about how memory shapes reality. She's been so helpful. Would you like to see her real memories, the ones where she talks about you?" Images flooded my mind. Not my memories, but Sarah's. I saw myself through her eyes as she interviewed me 3 months ago. Saw how she'd noticed my wedding ring, my family photos, my obvious love for my wife and daughter. I felt her psychological analysis of me. Dedicated family man, strong moral compass, would sacrifice anything for those he loves. "She knew you'd come back for her," the thing continued. "She told us all about you. How you blame yourself for every person you couldn't save. How you lie awake at night thinking about the ones who didn't make it home. How you're terrified that one day it'll be your own family out here, lost and afraid." The temperature kept dropping. My breath was coming in thick white puffs and frost was forming on the burnt aircraft wing despite the October sun overhead. "Where is she?" My voice came out as a whisper. "Where's the real Sarah?" The thing pointed to a spot in the air 3 feet to its left. I saw nothing but empty space, but suddenly I could hear Sarah's voice, distant and echoing. "Mom, is that you? I thought you were in California. How did you get here so fast? I'm so happy to see you." "She's reliving her 5th birthday party," the thing explained conversationally. "The happiest day of her childhood. We're keeping her comfortable while we learn everything she knows about human psychology. Soon we'll understand people well enough that no one will ever escape this forest again. Thanks to Sarah's research, we know exactly how to manipulate human behavior patterns." I reached for my service weapon, knowing it was useless against something like this, but needing the familiar weight in my hand. The thing wearing Sarah's face laughed. My laugh, perfectly reproduced. Bullets won't help you here, Tyler, but love might. The voice changed to Emma's again. Daddy, I made you a drawing. Do you want to see it? I felt my resolve wavering, felt the thing's influence creeping into my mind like ice water in my veins. It was showing me memories of Emma that weren't quite right. Emma saying things she'd never said, doing things she'd never done, loving me in ways that were too perfect, too complete. The false memories were so beautiful they made me want to surrender, to join Sarah in whatever blissful prison this entity had created for her. That's when I remembered my real daughter's imperfections. The way Emma rolled her eyes when I told dad jokes. How she'd rather play video games than catch with me in the backyard. How she'd been pulling away as she grew up, becoming her own person instead of just daddy's little girl. The thing could reproduce my memories perfectly, but it couldn't understand that love wasn't about perfection. It was about accepting someone completely, flaws and all. If this story is giving you chills, smash that follow button for more supernatural horror. What would you do in Tyler Mitchell's situation? Comment below. I pulled out my wallet and stared at the photo of my real family. Linda laughing at something I'd said, Emma making a silly face, both of them beautifully, imperfectly human. The cold receded slightly, and the thing wearing Sarah's face hissed like an angry cat. She's not perfect, I said out loud, focusing on Emma's image. My daughter's not perfect. She's 13 and bratty and sometimes cruel like all kids are. Linda's not perfect either. She snores, she leaves dishes in the sink, she worries too much about everything. But I love them exactly as they are, not as you think they should be. The false memories shattered like glass. The thing's perfect recreation of my family's voices became distorted, off-key, like a radio not quite tuned to the right frequency. You can't have them, I continued, standing up, feeling strength return to my legs. And you can't have me. I know who I really am. The entity abandoned Sarah's form and showed me its true nature, a writhing mass of shadow and memory fragments, hundreds of faces appearing and disappearing in the darkness, all the people it had consumed over the decades. I saw hikers I'd searched for and never found, campers who'd vanished without a trace, even that missing ranger from 2003, whose disappearance had haunted the entire service. But now I could see the cracks in its power. Every face in the writhing mass looked wrong somehow. Too perfect, too idealized. This thing could steal memories, but it couldn't understand the messy complexity of real human emotion. It saw love as possession, happiness as perfection, fear as weakness. Sarah! I called out to the empty space where her real consciousness was trapped. Sarah, remember who you really are. Remember your research. You know what this thing is. The air shimmered and suddenly I could see her, the real Sarah, suspended in a bubble of crystalline light, reliving an endless loop of childhood memories. But my words were getting through. Her eyes snapped open, focused on me. Tyler, you came back. Her voice was distant but growing stronger. I can see it now. The crash in 1952, it wasn't just an aircraft. It was carrying experimental psychoactive compounds, early attempts at memory manipulation. When it crashed, the chemicals soaked into the soil, created a kind of neural network in the earth itself. The entity roared, a sound like wind through broken glass. The forest around us began to shift and change, trees moving like living things, the ground rippling like water. Every person who died here fed it more memories, more knowledge, Sarah continued, her voice growing clearer as she fought against the entity's control. It's been learning for 70 years, learning how to use our own minds against us. How do we stop it? I shouted over the entity's howling. We don't, Sarah said sadly, but we can contain it. The military cordoned this area off for a reason. There's a containment protocol. If someone with authority knowledge triggers it, the area gets sealed permanently. She was fading again, the entity pulling her back into its memory trap. But she managed to gasp out one final instruction. GPS coordinates 38.2591°1. 79.8447 degree W. There's a military beacon. Emergency frequency 121.5. Tell them code blackout 7. The entity's roar became deafening, and the false forest around me began to collapse. I ran toward the coordinates Sarah had given me, my GPS spinning wildly as the entity's influence tried to disorient me. But I had something it couldn't corrupt: my genuine love for my imperfect family, my real memories of who I actually was. I found the military beacon buried under 60 years of leaves and debris. The old radio equipment was still functional, designed to last. As I switched to emergency frequency 121.5, the entity's attacks on my mind became desperate, frantic. It showed me Emma dying in a car crash, Linda leaving me, every fear I'd ever had played out in perfect, horrible detail. But they were too perfect, too much like a movie. Real tragedy is messier, more random, less dramatically satisfying. "This is Park Ranger Tyler Mitchell," I spoke into the ancient microphone. "GPS coordinates 38.2591 degree N, 79.8447 degree W. Code blackout 7. Repeat, code blackout 7. The response was immediate. "Roger, Mitchell. Blackout 7 confirmed. Evacuate immediately. You have 12 minutes before containment protocols activate." I looked back toward where Sarah was trapped. 12 minutes wasn't enough time to figure out how to free her from the entity's memory prison. She knew it too. Through the collapsing illusion of the forest, I saw her mouth the words, "Thank you," before the entity pulled her consciousness back into its collection. I ran harder than I'd ever run in my life, guided by GPS coordinates that finally made sense as the entity's influence weakened. Behind me, I heard the sound of helicopters, then explosions, then a silence so complete, it felt like the world holding its breath. When I reached my patrol SUV, 3 men in military fatigues were waiting for me. They debriefed me for 6 hours, made me sign documents that would ensure I never spoke publicly about what I'd found in those woods. The official report would say that Sarah Johnson fell into an unmarked ravine, that her body was recovered and returned to her family for burial. But Sarah's body was never found, because her body was never lost. Her consciousness is still trapped in that contained zone, reliving her happiest memories on an endless loop, while a thing made of stolen souls learns from her knowledge of human psychology. The hardest part is knowing she saved me. Sarah Johnson, brilliant and brave, had researched her way to understanding what that entity was and how to stop it. She'd known the cost, had chosen to pay it to ensure no one else would be taken. I drive past that trailhead sometimes, on my way to other calls, other searches. There's a new sign now: area closed, environmental hazard, authorized personnel only. The trail that used to lead to Devil's Backbone Ridge has been gated off, and according to the new maps, it never existed at all. But on quiet nights when the wind is just right, I swear I can hear Sarah's voice carried on the breeze. Not the entity's perfect imitation, but her real voice, still fighting, still trying to warn others about the things that hunt in the darkness between memory and reality. I keep her research notes in my desk drawer at home, next to the photos of my imperfect, beautiful family. Sometimes Emma catches me reading them and asks what they are. I tell her they're just work documents, old case files that got closed a long time ago. It's not exactly a lie. The case is closed. Sarah Johnson is officially dead, buried in a cemetery in Virginia with full honors and a headstone that reads, "Beloved daughter, brilliant researcher, lost too soon." But late at night when I can't sleep, I sometimes find myself planning a return trip to those coordinates. Not to that contained zone, I'm not suicidal, but to the areas around it, the places where the entity's influence might still leak through the military's containment protocols. Because somewhere in those mountains, a young woman's consciousness is trapped in an eternal prison of stolen memories, and the thing that holds her captive is still learning, still growing stronger. The official reports say the threat has been contained, but I've read Sarah's research. I know what that entity is capable of. I know that love and perfect memory aren't the same thing, and I know that somewhere in the darkness, something is still hungry for the one thing it can never truly understand: what it means to be genuinely, imperfectly human. My name is Tyler Mitchell, and I should have forgotten the case of Sarah Johnson, But some memories are too important to lose, even when forgetting would be easier. Especially then. Holy hell, that was intense. Did that ending blow your mind? Like, if you want more terrifying Ranger stories, follow for daily supernatural horror. And comment your theory about what really happened to Sarah Johnson. I read every single one. My name is Nathan Pierce, and this was the 6th hour searching for Trevor Johnson in the trails of Olympic National Park. My rookie badge felt heavier with each passing minute, the weight of responsibility crushing down on my shoulders like the oppressive canopy overhead. The Motorola radio crackled against my hip, static mixed with the distant voices of more experienced rangers coordinating search grids I was still learning to navigate. 6 hours. Trevor's parents had called it in at 0347 hours when their son didn't return from his solo photography expedition. 22 years old, about 5'10", wearing a red Columbia jacket and carrying a Canon 5D Mark IV. Details I'd repeated to myself so many times they felt branded into my skull. The kind of details that mattered when time was running out. My GPS coordinates read 47 degree 58 12N, 124 degree 045W, putting me deep in the Hoh River drainage. The scent of decomposing salmon from the river mixed with Douglas fir and something else, something wrong that made my sinuses burn. In my 3 months as a ranger, I'd learned to trust the forest's rhythms, but today everything felt off. The typical morning bird chorus had died to an unnatural silence, leaving only the sound of my own labored breathing and the crunch of fallen needles under my vast hiking boots. Unit 23, what's your 20? Senior Ranger Martinez's voice crackled through the radio. Grid 7 Delta, moving northwest along the Miners Creek Trail, I responded, trying to keep the exhaustion out of my voice. My pack felt like it had doubled in weight since dawn. 45 pounds of search and rescue gear, emergency medical supplies, and enough water to last till sunset. The rookie in me wanted to prove I could handle anything the veterans threw at me. But the forest was fighting back. My handheld GPS had been glitching for the last hour, showing impossible readings that put me simultaneously 3 miles north and 2 miles south of my actual position. The compass spun lazily, unable to find magnetic north. I'd chalked it up to equipment failure until I noticed my iPhone doing the same thing. 5 bars of signal dropping to nothing every time I approached the dense grove ahead. The trail forked near a moss-covered Douglas fir that had to be 6 feet in diameter. No markers. No signs. Just 2 paths disappearing into shadows that seemed too dark for 1:30 p.m. The left path showed recent boot prints, size 11 Merrill boots that matched Trevor's gear list. My heart hammered against my ribs as I followed them deeper into territory that wasn't on any of my maps. That's when I smelled the smoke. Not the clean scent of a permitted campfire, but something organic and foul that made my stomach clench. Wood smoke mixed with something that reminded me of the butcher shop where my dad used to take me as a kid. That metallic sweetness of fresh meat hanging in cold air. The hairs on my neck stood up as a childhood memory surfaced unbidden, my grandmother warning me about bad smells in good places. The boot prints led to a clearing I swear hadn't been there on my morning satellite imagery review. Perfectly circular, maybe 30 feet across, ringed by 7 massive cedar stumps arranged with geometric precision. The ground was bare earth, dark and rich like freshly turned garden soil. But it was October in western Washington. Everything should have been carpeted in fallen leaves. In the center of the clearing sat Trevor's camera bag. My rookie training kicked in. Secure the scene. Document everything. Don't contaminate evidence. But my hands shook as I keyed the radio, and the static that came back sounded almost like whispered voices speaking in a language I didn't recognize. Base, this is Unit 23. I've located potential evidence at... I checked my GPS again. The screen showed only a blue void where the map should have been. Shit, base, GPS is down. I'm approximately 2 clicks northwest of the Miners Creek trailhead. Found the missing person's camera equipment. Static. Then Martinez's voice, distant and distorted. Copy that. Be advised. Reports of 1973. Cult activity. Do not... The transmission cut to white noise that sounded suspiciously like chanting. I approached Trevor's bag with my service flashlight drawn. though the October afternoon sun still filtered through the canopy. The Canon 5D Mark IV lay beside the bag, its memory card missing. The LCD screen had been smashed, but not by accident. The impact pattern suggested deliberate destruction, small, precise strikes that spiderwebbed the display. Something crunched under my boot. I looked down to find symbols carved into wooden discs, each about the size of a silver dollar. 7 of them arranged in a perfect circle around where I stood. The wood was fresh cut, sap still tacky to the touch, but the symbols looked ancient, not Native American. I'd studied regional petroglyphs during my training. These were different. European maybe, or something older. The temperature dropped 15 degrees in as many seconds. My breath misted as I photographed the wooden discs with my department iPhone. But when I reviewed the images, the symbols appeared blurred, as if the camera couldn't quite focus on them. Each photo showed something different. Sometimes the symbols looked like letters, sometimes like crude drawings of human figures in various positions of torment. That's when I heard Trevor screaming. The sound came from everywhere and nowhere, echoing off the trees like a recording played through hidden speakers. But it was definitely Trevor. I'd heard him laughing in the family photos his mother had shown me that morning, and voices carry their own fingerprints. This was him, crying out in terror and pain, the sound getting closer and then farther away as if he was being moved. I grabbed my radio. "Base, this is Unit 23. I can hear the missing person. He's alive but in distress. I need backup at my location immediately." Static. Then a voice that might have been Martinez or might have been something else entirely. "Copy that, Pierce. Backup is coming. Stay exactly where you are. Do not follow the sounds. Do you understand? Do not follow the sounds." But the screaming was getting fainter, receding deeper into the forest. Every instinct I had as a ranger screamed at me to follow, to save Trevor Johnson before whatever had him did something permanent. The rookie in me wanted to wait for backup. The human being in me couldn't let another person suffer. I followed the screams. The trail, if you could call it that, wound between trees that grew too close together, their branches interlocked overhead like arthritic fingers. My flashlight beam seemed to die just feet ahead of me, swallowed by shadows that moved independently of the wind. The GPS on my phone showed I was walking in perfectly straight lines, but I was definitely following a winding path. Either the technology was lying or something was wrong with space itself. The screaming stopped. In the sudden silence, I heard my own heart hammering, the whisper of wind through needles, and underneath it all, a low humming that seemed to come from the earth itself. Not mechanical, organic, like the sound a cat makes when it purrs, but pitched so low I felt it in my bones more than heard it with my ears. That's when I saw the first figure. He stood maybe 50 yards ahead, perfectly still between 2 massive hemlocks. Adult male, average height, wearing what looked like a Park Service uniform. For a split second, relief flooded through me. Backup had arrived faster than I'd expected. I raised my hand to wave, opened my mouth to call out. Then I noticed he was facing away from me, but his head was turned all the way around, watching me with eyes that reflected my flashlight beam like an animal's. I stumbled backward, hand going instinctively to the service pistol I'd never had to draw in 3 months on the job. The figure didn't move, didn't speak, just watched with that impossible neck rotation as I backed into something solid and warm. "Looking for someone, Ranger Pierce?" The voice came from directly behind me, soft and conversational, like we were meeting at a coffee shop instead of deep in haunted woods. I spun around to find a woman in her 60s, grandmotherly and kind, wearing a faded floral dress that had probably been fashionable in 1973. She smiled at me with the patient warmth of someone's favorite teacher. "We've been waiting for you," she continued. "Well, not you specifically, but someone like you, someone new, someone who doesn't know the old stories." My hand found the radio on my belt. Dead. No static, no lights, nothing. The iPhone in my pocket showed no bars, no network, no time. The display flickered between 1:47 p.m. and 11:58 p.m., as if it couldn't decide what time it was supposed to be. "Where's Trevor Johnson?" I managed to ask, my voice cracking like a teenager's. The woman's smile widened. Trevor is participating in something much more important than a photography expedition. Something that was interrupted back in 1973, but never finished. We've been waiting 45 years to complete our work. More figures emerged from between the trees. Men and women of various ages, all wearing clothes that looked decades out of date. Some wore the brown uniforms of Park Service employees, others dressed in hiking gear from the 1970s. All of them watched me with the same patient, predatory interest. "You see," the woman continued, "there are certain requirements for what we do. Specific bloodlines, specific genetic markers. Trevor Johnson carries the DNA we need, passed down from his grandfather who was so rude to us all those years ago. If this story is giving you chills, smash that follow button for more supernatural horror. What would you do in Nathan Pierce's situation? Comment below." The humming sound grew louder and I realized it wasn't coming from the ground. It was coming from them. All of them, humming in perfect harmony, a tune that made my teeth ache and my vision blur around the edges. The melody was familiar somehow, like a half-remembered lullaby from childhood, but wrong in ways my mind couldn't quite process. "The beautiful thing about modern technology," the woman said, pulling an iPhone from her dress pocket, "is how easy it makes tracking people." Trevor posted his hiking plans on Instagram 3 days ago. GPS coordinates, timeline, even photos of his equipment. We simply had to wait. She showed me the phone screen, Trevor's Instagram account, but the photos weren't the nature shots I'd expect. They showed him in this same clearing, but in the images he was smiling, posing with these same people like they were old friends. The timestamp said the photos were posted 6 hours ago, but that was impossible. Trevor had been missing for 8 hours, and these people looked exactly the same in person as they did in 1973. Police reports I'd studied during my training. "How?" I whispered. "The same way we've stayed young and healthy for 45 years, she replied. "The same way we've kept our community alive while the outside world forgot we existed. The same way we're going to complete the work that was interrupted when those interfering federal agents broke up our little gathering back in 73. My mind raced, trying to connect dots from half-remembered briefings about cult activity in the Olympic Peninsula. In 1973, a federal task force had raided several compounds throughout the Pacific Northwest, arresting hundreds of people connected to various occult groups. Most were prosecuted for tax evasion or fraud, but several groups had simply vanished before the raids, disappeared into the wilderness with their leaders and their secrets. "Where is Trevor?" I asked again, my voice stronger this time. "Trevor is preparing," the woman said. "Fasting, purifying, getting ready to fulfill his grandfather's debt. You see, Agent Robert Johnson was the federal officer who led the raid on our compound. He took something that didn't belong to him, our eternal covenant, our path to transcendence. We've spent 45 years tracking down his bloodline." The circle of figures began to close in, their humming growing louder and more complex, harmonies layering upon harmonies until the sound became a physical pressure against my eardrums. The wooden symbols carved into discs began to glow with a sickly phosphorescent light, casting shifting shadows that moved independently of the figures carrying them. "But you've given us something even better than Trevor," the woman continued, her kind smile never wavering. "You've given us legitimacy, a federal employee sent into our domain by your own superiors. When you disappear, they'll send more rangers to look for you. Then more when those disappear, each one carrying the authority of the federal government that destroyed our first incarnation." I ran. Training, protocol, common sense, all of it evaporated as pure animal terror took control. I crashed through underbrush, leaped over fallen logs, sprinted through groves of trees that seemed to shift and change positions as I passed them. Behind me, the humming never stopped, never got louder or softer, maintaining the same horrible harmony no matter how fast or far I ran. My flashlight died after the first 100 yards. My backup flashlight lasted another 50. In the growing darkness, I relied on muscle memory and desperate luck, following what I hoped was the trail back to the main path. Tree branches caught at my uniform, tore holes in my sleeves, left scratches on my face that stung with every drop of sweat. The humming stopped. In the sudden silence, I could hear my own ragged breathing, the crash of my boots through fallen leaves, and nothing else. No bird calls, no wind, no distant traffic from the park road. Just the sound of one terrified rookie ranger stumbling through haunted woods. I stopped running and tried to get my bearings. The GPS on my phone was working again, showing I was less than half a mile from the main trailhead. But the map display flickered between current satellite imagery and what looked like hand-drawn survey maps from the 1800s. In the older maps, my current location was marked with symbols that matched the wooden discs I'd found in the clearing. A text message notification chimed. Unknown number. "Come back, Nathan. Trevor is asking for you." I deleted the message and kept walking, but my phone chimed again immediately. Same number. "He says you remind him of his grandfather. Strong, determined, righteous." Delete. Another chime. Agent Johnson thought he was saving people too. I turned the phone off, but it turned itself back on. Message after message, each one appearing faster than I could delete them. "We have Trevor. He's still alive. Still pure. Still perfect for what we need. But not for much longer. The ritual requires completion before midnight. Come back, Nathan. Save him. Be the hero. Just like his grandfather tried to be." I threw the phone into the woods and heard it chime with incoming messages even after it disappeared into the darkness. The main trail appeared ahead, marked by the familiar brown Park Service signs I'd studied during orientation. Paradise Trail, 2.3 miles to parking area. I'd never been so happy to see bureaucratic signage in my life. Behind me, the forest had returned to its normal evening sounds. Owls calling, small animals moving through underbrush, wind rustling through the canopy. But as I walked, I noticed the signs were changing. Subtly at first. Paradise Trail, 2.3 miles became Paradise Trail 2.4 miles after I'd been walking for 10 minutes. Then 2.5 miles. Then Paradise Trail 3.1 miles to parking area, established 1973. That last part was wrong. Olympic National Park had been established in 1938. I'd memorized the dates during training, but more signs appeared as I walked, each one pushing the parking area farther away, each one adding details that shouldn't exist. Paradise Trail, 4.2 miles to parking area, dedicated to the memory of Agent Robert Johnson, 1943-1973. Paradise Trail, 5.8 miles, warning, federal agents should use extreme caution beyond this point. Paradise Trail, 7.1 miles. He thought he could save them all. Inscription on Agent Johnson's headstone, Tacoma Memorial Cemetery. I was walking in circles. Had to be. The trail signs were lying, or someone was moving them, or my mind was finally cracking under the psychological pressure. But my legs felt like I'd been walking for hours, and my watch showed 11:47 p.m. when it should have been early afternoon. That's when I heard Trevor screaming again. Closer this time. Much closer. Just off the trail to my right, maybe 50 yards into the woods. But the screaming had an echo to it now, like it was coming from underground. From somewhere deep and enclosed and wrong, a new sign appeared directly in front of me. Agent Johnson Memorial Bunker, 0.1 miles. Visitors welcome. Always open. An arrow pointed into the darkness. Every rational part of my mind screamed at me to keep walking, to get back to the parking area, to call for real backup with real weapons and real authority. But Trevor was down there somewhere, and I was the only person who knew where to find him, the only person who could save him before midnight, whatever happened at midnight. I followed the arrow. The path was well maintained, too well maintained for something that supposedly led to a memorial bunker in the middle of nowhere. Solar-powered lights marked the way, their LED bulbs casting blue-white circles on perfectly groomed gravel. Someone had been maintaining this trail regularly, recently, with government-quality equipment. The bunker sat in a depression surrounded by towering Douglas firs, its concrete entrance barely visible until I was standing directly in front of it. A brass plaque beside the door read, "In memory of Federal Agent Robert Johnson and the 47 victims of the Olympic Peninsula incident, October 31st, 1973. Lest we forget. 47 victims. That detail hadn't been in any of the briefings I'd read. The door was heavy steel, painted forest green, with a simple handle that turned easily in my hand. It should have been locked. Should have been secured. Should have required federal authorization to enter. Instead, it opened to reveal a staircase leading down into warm, electric-lit corridors that hummed with the same organic harmony I'd heard in the woods. Trevor's screaming was definitely coming from below. I descended. The stairs were concrete, institutional, like something you'd find in a government building or military facility. But the walls were covered in photographs, hundreds of them, dating back decades. Pictures of people in Park Service uniforms, FBI agents, local law enforcement, all standing in groups around what looked like crime scenes. And in every photo, lurking in the background or standing just out of focus, were the same figures I'd encountered in the clearing. The woman in the floral dress, the man with the impossible neck rotation, others I hadn't seen yet, but all of them looking exactly the same as they had in 1973, as they had tonight. At the bottom of the stairs, a hallway stretched in both directions, lit by fluorescent fixtures that flickered with the rhythm of the humming. More photographs lined the walls, but these were different. Surveillance photos, taken from a distance with telephoto lenses. Pictures of Trevor Johnson at his college graduation, his parents at their wedding, his grandparents in old family portraits, and pictures of me. Me at the Ranger Academy 6 months ago. Me moving into my apartment in Port Angeles. Me having coffee with my girlfriend Sarah last weekend, both of us laughing at something she'd said, completely unaware we were being watched. A brass nameplate beside one photo read, Nathan Pierce, assigned Olympic National Park, July 2018. Grandson of Deputy Marshal William Pierce, deceased, 1973. My grandfather had been a deputy marshal, had died in 1973. But my family had never talked about how or why, just that it had been in the line of duty, somewhere in Washington state. My grandmother would change the subject whenever I asked questions. Now, I knew why. The hallway ended at a heavy wooden door marked Chapel. Trevor's screaming was coming from the other side, mixed with voices chanting in that same unknown language I'd heard on the radio. The door handle was warm to the touch, almost body temperature, and turned easily in my hand. Inside, I found a room that couldn't possibly exist. The space was enormous, far larger than the bunker's external dimensions could contain. Vaulted ceilings disappeared into shadows 40 feet overhead. Rows of wooden pews faced an altar that looked like it had been carved from a single massive tree stump, and standing around the altar, maybe 50 people in clothes spanning 5 decades, all humming in perfect harmony, while watching Trevor Johnson struggle against restraints made from what looked like human hair braided into rope. He was alive, conscious, terrified but uninjured. When he saw me in the doorway, his eyes went wide with relief and hope. "Nathan," he called out. Thank God. I knew someone would come. I knew. "Trevor Johnson," the woman in the floral dress interrupted, stepping away from the altar. "Meet Nathan Pierce. His grandfather killed your grandfather 45 years ago today. Isn't that poetic?" The chanting stopped. 50 faces turned toward me with expressions of patient, predatory interest. And in the sudden silence, I heard something that made my blood turn to ice water. The sound of the door closing behind me, and the click of an electronic lock engaging. "Welcome home, Nathan," the woman said. "We've been waiting for you to join us. Your grandfather interrupted our work back in 1973, but his sacrifice, and yours, will help us complete it tonight." On the altar, Trevor struggled against his restraints and screamed my name. Around the room, the assembled cult members resumed their chanting, the harmony building toward something that made the air itself vibrate with wrongness. And I realized that everything, the search, the discovery of Trevor's camera, the chase through the woods, even finding this bunker, had been orchestrated from the beginning. They hadn't just been waiting for Trevor Johnson. They'd been waiting for both of us, the grandsons of the men who had destroyed their first attempt at transcendence in 1973, and we had walked right into their trap. The chanting reached a crescendo as my watch ticked over to 11:59 p.m., And I understood with horrible clarity what was going to happen at midnight. The same thing that was supposed to happen 45 years ago, before my grandfather and Agent Johnson interrupted it. But this time there would be no one coming to save us. This time they were going to finish what they started. Holy hell, that was intense. Did that ending blow your mind? Like, if you want more terrifying Ranger stories, follow for daily supernatural horror. And comment your theory about what really happened to Trevor Johnson and Nathan Pierce. I read every single one.